Good day. Today we will be discussing Chapter 6, Lesson 2 that will be found in your interactive science books for grade 4 on pages number 245 to pages 253. Now, the topic for today is, or this lesson will be, how rocks are classified. So in this lesson, we will be focusing on the three main types of rocks. So these are called igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. But first of all, we need to know how Earth's structure looks like, and then how these three types of rocks are formed. So let's get to it. Earth's structure. So why do we look at Earth's structure? Is to get a better understanding of how these rocks are formed. Okay, so first of all, we look at the crust. Now, the crust is made out of a very thin layer. So if we would have shrunken the Earth down to the size of a peach, say, for instance, the Earth's crust would be so thin, it would be the size of the Earth's or the peach's skin. So it is very, very, very thin in comparison to all the other layers. We can see that the crust, mantle, outer core, and inner core form the four main layers of the Earth. So we can look at the inner core. The inner core is a solid, very hot ball of metal or a metal type, and then the outer core will be a liquid form. So the mantle will be all kinds of rock types that have been melted because of the tremendous heat that is found within the Earth's core. So the crust is a very thin layer that has cooled down and is almost 100 kilometers thick. So it's between 0 and 100 kilometers thick. So we can see that the Earth's crust is covered by oceanic water. More than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. The rest, the 30%, is landmarks that form, mountains or valleys or plains. So now that we know what the Earth's structure looks like, we can look at the rock cycle. So what is a rock cycle? Similar to what the water cycle is, where water is being drawn up and then carried over mountains, and it rains and it gets blown or goes back into the oceans, and then the cycle returns. Rocks have the same or a similar way of being renewed, if I can say it in that sense. So first of all, we look at magma here. Now, magma is below the Earth's surface, below the crust, and it comes from the mantle. Now, the mantle is melted and it pushes up the rock where it ignites or it explodes out of a volcano's mouth. Okay, so that is called igneous rock. So the rocks are very new, very hot, and it flies out of the volcano's mouth and it forms sedimentary layers on top of the mountain. Now, weathering and erosion, which we will still discuss, causes the sediments to break apart, or the rock to break apart, and is carried down mountains into the oceans, where new layers of sediment form. And when they form, they get pushed down by layers of new sediment that can form underneath the Earth's surface. Now, you can see that these different layers are different colors in the model shown here. And the more layers of sediment rock forms on top of the next one, heat and pressure will change that rock. Now, the change of those rocks are called metamorphic rocks. So sometimes those rocks find its way up to the surface due to tectonic plates moving. So sometimes those rock melts into the mantle and it's being pushed up again into magma chambers, where the rock cycle then begins all over again. Now let's look at the first type of rock. The first rock is called igneous rock. Now, those are one of the three main types of rocks. Igneous rocks form through the cooling and solidification of magma or lava. So once it comes out of the lava chamber, it cools rapidly or very slowly. And if it cools very rapidly, it will look like this rock here. But if it cools very slowly, it will look like the rock on the left-hand side. The magma can be derived from partial melts of existing rock in either planet's mantle or crust. So the crust can be melted, or the mantle can be pushed up to the surface. So if that happens, it interacts with one another, but it melts the rock and it spews it out, called igneous rocks. The second type of rock that we can see is called sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rocks are types of rock that are formed by accumulating depositions of small particles and substances, cementation of minerals or organic particles on the floor of oceans or other bodies of water at the Earth's surface. So weathering helps break down rock, which causes those rock or sediments to lay on top of one another in the oceans, and then that can solidify in a process called cementation. Now you can see this type of rock with all the different colors there of all the different layers, and this broke apart from a bigger rock that might have formed. Now, in other sediment types of rock, you can see that there is little bits of pieces of other rock and elements inside of this rock, and that's also called sedimentary rock. The third type that we've got is called, or the third one that we have here, we can see that there's layers of sediments have laid on top of one another, causing sedimentary rock to form. The third type of rock is called metamorphic rock. Now, this is due to sedimentary rock being pushed down into the Earth's crust and then changing over a period of millions of years, which is caused due to the heat and pressure. So if we read here, metamorphic rock rises from the transformation of existing rock types in a process called metamorphism, which means change in form. The original rock is subjected to heat and pressure, causing profound physical or chemical changes. And one example that I can think of is carbon being pressed down and then being formed into diamonds. All right, and then with gradual movement of the Earth's crust, it gets pushed up so that we can harvest that on the Earth's surface. So here's one of those examples where deep down the Earth's surface, this rock has changed and being pushed up towards the Earth's surface. This is called a metamorphic rock. A second example is when we can see graphite, right, that has been turned into another type of rock that has these beautiful lines on them. So those are the three different types of rocks that we found on, or can be found on, Earth's surface. I hope that you have learned a little bit more about how to identify rocks, and I hope to see you in the next video.